Paradigms are lenses that organize data to be consistent with the paradigm. As such, they reveal a part of the possibility field of perception. And the paradigm of ecology, the ecological paradigm, reveals the relationship between everything and everything else. And we start off with the one, with the sphere, with the whole. And we divide it into parts because the one, in its infinite unity, in its all-encompassingness, is unconscious. If someone says, "What are you thinking and feeling today?" and you say, "Everything," it's also nothing, right? So what of everything? Everything. I'm thinking and feeling everything. Oh, great. You've successfully dodged the question correctly by avoiding the delineation of where you are as an ego, as an individual partitioned from the whole, looking out at the whole. You're not telling me where you are, where your perspective is coming from. I can't locate you because you're everywhere. And so the one, the whole, is everything. It's one, and it is completely and utterly unconscious. Consciousness emerges as we break the whole, the one, the everything, into pieces, and the simplest form is to cut it in half. So we take the sphere, we cut it in half. Now we have yin and yang, we have up and down, we have right and left, we have good and bad, a questionable paradigm, but nonetheless, we've cut the world into two. We've descended from the garden. You see, the garden is the ecology, into the knowledge. Knowledge is language of good and evil, of polarity, of left and right. Now, the problem with this, of course, is that we like to know which is the right one, which is the good one, and which is the bad one. And this makes no ecological sense. You cannot have up without down. You cannot have black without white. You cannot have men without women. You cannot have women without men. It's a non sequitur. It doesn't go anywhere. And yet, the cult-trained ego, having been taught in childhood that this is good and this is bad, and that bad things get punished, the childlike ego wants to know what's the good one, what's the bad. Is that a good person or a bad person? And I want to be a good person so I won't be punished. Because having broken the world into two and deciding this is the good one and that's the bad one, the bad ones get punished and the good ones get rewarded. And I want to be rewarded, so I don't want to get anywhere near the bad ones. But it's easy in the disintegration. See, language creates consciousness because it creates thought. You cannot think a thought without language. You think a thought with language. And you cannot be conscious that you're conscious without a thought. So you cannot be conscious that you're conscious without language. So your consciousness is derived by taking the infinite one and cutting it into pieces. And one of the big pieces that we cut the infinite one into is me and you. This is me, that's you. That's not me, this is me. This is me, that's you. And this is us, this is them. And of course, since the paradigm is punishment, that's different. So which is good, which is bad? And of course, we want to be right, right being the good side, left being the bad side. We want to be right because then we'll be rewarded rather than punished. And so it makes perfect sense. We're different. Who's right and who's wrong? Well, of course, I'm right. I'm not wrong. I'm right. And you're wrong. And so I should be rewarded and you should be punished. And the paradigm is usually that of might makes right. But it is useful in all of our human consciousness and all of the cuts and severs that we've made to create our experience of reality through language, to understand that every moment is linked to every moment, that every space is linked to every other space. Everything that is linked to everything that is. So here's a couple of kind of easy angles into the awareness of interconnectivity, of ecology. Well, think about the possibility field. The possibility field is everything that is possible. Now, are you possible? Well, you're here, so you're obviously possible. Are you probable? Well, you're here, so you're obviously probable. You have to be probable before you're actual, and you're here, so you're actual. So you're actual. And you're also probable, and you're also possible. Well, think of a possibility field as a mathematical equation. Think of it as a 360-degree spectrum of possibility. I could go backwards, I could go forward, I could go to the left, I could go here. The species can turn this way, this way, this way, this way. Spaces and the universe is expanding in this direction, in this direction, in this direction. You can think of it a little bit as, in the equation of sight as well. If you've got eyes, you've got a possibility field of how far is your vision. What's the farthest you can see with your eyes? Now, if your eyes can see, let's say, 30 miles, let's say you probably can't see too far out beyond the horizon at the curvature of the Earth or whatever. And so, but let's just say you can see 30 miles. And that 100 miles is impossible. Whatever it is, 1,000 miles, 100 miles, whatever, that there's a certain point beyond which you cannot see. Your lenses in this atmosphere just cannot pick anything out more than 1,000 miles on the horizon, whatever it is. Well, that's your possible field. Now, that creates a circle, because if you have a possibility field of 30 miles, 50 miles, 100 miles, 1,000 miles, it doesn't change, does it? I mean, it's not like your eyes suddenly change when you turn left and change when they turn right. No, your eyes have that as a possibility field. And then what you see can be limited. It's possible I could see 100 miles, but there's a big tree right here and I only see 30 feet. And I keep spinning and I see 100 miles again. Then over here, it's foggy, so I only see 30 miles. But my eyes have the possibility of seeing 100 miles. Well, that's your possibility field. And if you don't want to see something that's 10 feet in front of you, I don't want to look at that. I don't like it. I don't want to see it. And you really don't want to see it. You can close your eyes, for example, and now your possibility field is nothing. But if you can also start blinding yourself. You can reduce the distance that you can see to 9 feet. And then if it's impossible to see more than 3 feet, you're not going to see that object 10 feet away. And this blindness can be psychological. It can be physical. I don't want to see this particular pain. Therefore, I have to bring in my vision. You see, because if my eyes are open and they can see 100 miles and I turn this way, I can also see that tree. I can see that pain. I can see that object there. I don't want to see it. So I'm going to turn my back to it, or I'm going to reduce my scale of vision. Well, going back to the possibility field, you are a part of this possibility field. And if you don't exist, then the possibility field that gives birth to you does not exist either. You can't delete individual things from a possibility field without collapsing the possibility field, out of which emerges the probability field, out of which emerges the actual field. So you collapse a lot in order for one thing not to exist. Now, let's look at our relationship to time. In our narrative, at one time, there was nothing. And then, out of less than the size of a pea, everything, the universe, poof, bang, the Big Bang, and things get off to the races. This molecule goes off in this direction, forms hydrogen in this. This becomes over here. This one's going out further in this direction. All around, the universe is busy, getting bigger, diversifying, specializing, testing out various experiments. But if the Big Bang didn't happen, then you didn't happen either. You can't have you without the Big Bang, but you also can't have your brother. You can't have Netflix. You can't have cars. You can't have food without the Big Bang. So there is an inextricable link. If you delete the Big Bang from the equation of reality, then the reality in which you exist to analyze the equation doesn't exist. So you're pretty closely linked, and so is everything else. That person you hate, that person you love, that flower you like, that flower you don't like, up, down, right, left, good, bad, they're all linked to the Big Bang, aren't they? Now, the Big Bang is then also linked to you, to everything else. So there is an inextricable connection between every single thing happening today and the origin of the universe, in whose container everything that is happening today emerges. Now, could that bridge between the present and the past exist if a single day was missing? The Big Bang radiating out, radiating out, radiating out, and then for one day it stops, just doesn't exist. And then could it continue on the other side of a non-existent day? If a single day, if a single minute in the time continuum was missing, could reality exist after the gap. Let's say in a calculator equation, 386 multiplied by 7,000 divided by 2 plus 3,084,000 multiplied by 3, and so it goes, and so it goes. If you took a single one of those numbers out of the equation, even just one of them, in an equation that's 10 billion digits long, could you get the same outcome? Or does every single digit in the entire mathematical equation affect the outcome? Back at 3,987,000 digits, one thing changed from a 3 to a 4. That's it. And everything else in 10 billion digits of equations stayed exactly the same, but one 3 was turned into a 4. Could you get the same equation? Could you delete a single person from the equation of the species and still get the same outcome? Could you delete a single hour of your life and still get the same outcome today? And mathematically speaking, you cannot. You cannot change in a running continuous equation. You cannot change a single thing about the past without having ripple effects in the present and in every part of the equation going forward. From the moment the change occurs, the equation ripples out. Now, particularly when we get into psychology, the present also changes the past. Well, how does that work? Well, imagine that you were beaten, humiliated, shamed, bullied, lied to in the past, in your childhood. But you decided at some point, you introduced some new data, some new bits to the recipe of that moment, where maybe you became someone with a positive mental attitude or imported a belief. You saw a belief out there, you said, I like that, I'll import that, I'll run that on my operating system. And my belief is that I can live a happy and fulfilled life. It's up to me. And because it's up to me, I better get my act together. Because I'm going to get my act together, I'm going to learn this, I'm going to learn this, I'm going to learn this, this, and this. And at that point in the equation, importing those variables, you then created a hyper-successful, hyper-exciting, hyper-enjoyable life. You like it. The people around you like it. The species likes it. It's pretty good. Now, what happens to the past? Well, there were moments when you weren't being beaten. There were moments when you got this beautiful book. There were moments, and those moments are a little bit more consistent with the equation that is the present. And the brain likes consistency, and so those get highlighted. You have a whole book, but I highlight this thing. But someone who deteriorates into alcoholism, shame, bitterness, continues to experience abuse. What's consistent with that is the beatings. those fuckers, they've been doing it since I was born. This, then this, then this, then this, and this, and this. And those events are highlighted. The other events, they happened. I did eat cornflakes. I did have a soft pillow. I did have that one person smiling at me. I went on this beautiful walk in the woods to escape my bullying brother. I did this, I did that. But yeah, I was doing that too. And these get highlighted. Remember, a highlighter is just one of those little yellow pens where you read, 30 pages and you highlight, you emphasize 5 sentences in 30 pages, or one sentence, the defining sentence. That's what matters. And we each do that. We each highlight different things. And different presents highlight different pasts. When we're feeling depressed, and this highlighting is a very important part of how we create and recreate the past. Because we don't generally like to be crazy. And what's crazy? It's dissociation. From what? The present and the past, among other things. We don't like the idea. You had a miserable childhood and that's why you're happy today? No, that's crazy. No. You had a miserable childhood and that's why you're miserable today. Consistent. I don't want to be crazy. That equals that. So, if you had a great day today, then you had a decent childhood, right? And you can create the one or the other because we don't have enough attention. We don't have enough RAM in the human operating system to remember all that happened all the time. What we remember, what we put back together, are what we're highlighting at that time. Now, if I'm going through suicidal depression, one of the things the brain likes to do is, why? Why am I going through suicidal depression? Then my brain wants to go into the past and say, well, the reason is, your dad hit you here, your mother laughed when you were doing this, your siblings never cared about you whenever you were crying, they always laughed at you and this, and you highlight that this. Well, of course I want to commit suicide. Of course I'm feeling miserable, lonely, and of course I don't trust people because of this and this and this and this. And those things are highlighted. Week later, you've met someone on a date, you got a promotion, whatever, and now you feel excited. There's hope, right? There's hope. It's like maybe this time it's going to work out. And the cynics in us are snickering. Yeah, right, But maybe this time it's going to work out. And then, amazing. She likes me. Amazing. She smiled. She laughed at my jokes. I'd given up thinking it was amazing. There's hope. There's hope. Life isn't so bad. Life is not so bad. And those cruel, evil, well, they had their good sides. They had their good sides. What about that time of the cornflakes and this and that and the other? And you just highlight new things. In other words, while the past, in its objective abstraction, may be 10 billion data points, First of all, the conscious mind only registers half of those while they're happening. In any given moment, 50% of the sensory data is being discarded because it's not being highlighted for some theme created by the conscious mind at the time. So it's doing this and this. So 50% even while you're doing it is being discarded. Well, when you look back at 30 years, for example, over the span of 5 minutes, you're discarding 99% of the actual data points. And what you're using is heuristic models based on a few highlighted events and then a bunch of those, you say, like, remember that time, I told my mother no, but she never listened to me. She never listened to me. And there was a whole other bunch of times, I don't have time to highlight right now, but you see, right like that, and she was always like that. Okay. And now you're doing that. You're just like my mother, right? Well, you've recreated the past in that moment to highlight a theme. You, in the present, have recreated your past because your past suddenly only consists of mother never listening. And it's still going on. And so you've recreated the past. So we constantly create the past with the present. Now, we also create the present with the future. We're always deciding in the future. So, we're looking and we're going through realities. It's like, but it's all going to work out in the end. See, that's a different future, isn't it? Yes, I wasn't, this happened, but this is a hero's journey. This is a hero's tale. And then, and it all worked out well in the end. I just have to carry on going through this, and it's no big deal because it all works out in the end. We're all human beings. We made a few mistakes. We sorted it out. Another billion years from now, and I guarantee you, it'll all be worked out. We'll all have psychological competency by that time. We'll look back at the times we were psychologically illiterate and chauvinistic and this and that. And it was such a waste of time, but so silly. I mean, we learned so much. We had to do this and this and this. And isn't it a nice? Wasn't it a beautiful journey into the darkness and out in the light? We're now, a billion years forward, pollinating the stars. We don't just have Starlink around North America. We've got it on multiple planets. We've got time tunnels. We've got this and this and this. And that's where we're going. And so this is a learning. This is uncomfortable, yes, and this. But how exciting. Let's track. How do we get to this brilliant, amazing? Or it's never going to work. It doesn't matter. I just know it. No, it's going to get close. And just when it looks close, it's all going to fall apart. I knew it. See, look at it. It did it again. It's pointless. It's hopeless. I just want to scream. I want to kill someone. Those are two futures. They're not here, but are they? Where are they? I just know it. Well, I just know this. You see, the future creates the present. Imagine you spent 30 years in jail in a little concrete cell, and after a while you've kind of enjoyed, there's a little tree out, tiny little 8-inch window, little bird comes. You really, you've after fighting and railing, you did some good reading. You've learned Zen meditation. It's like, wow, solitary confinement. good practice. Free, silent retreats. Amazing. Didn't like them at first, but, I really got my act together. And tomorrow I'm going to be set free. On all that noise, cell phones, screens, landlords. Oh, my goodness. It's not so bad in here, is it? I'm gonna miss some part of this. And Joe down the road, a few cells down, we've kind of gotten to know each other. And I don't really know anyone on the outside anymore. There's a scene in Shawshank Redemption where the identity became formed in prison, and so the identity couldn't support itself without the prison environment. The pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being was too big of a jump to go from this pattern to this whole new pattern. And so, how do you get back in prison? Just commit another crime. You'll be right back where you were before, in the known safety and the stability of an identity that I understand. And so you're going to be leaving tomorrow. You look at your friends, your experiences, your prison cell a little differently. Maybe I'm going to miss the solitude. Gosh, my aunt, she is such a chatterbox. Oh my goodness. I don't have to listen to her in prison. It's wonderful. And I'm going to miss it, right? Or you're in the exact same moment. I'm condemned here for the rest of my life. I'm never going to be able to have children. I'm never going to be able to touch people's lives. I'm just going to be stuck in this concrete box. No matter what. I don't like how, I hate it. I don't like that feeling. But some of that feeling is created by the concrete box. But you couldn't have the feeling without the thought. So you can also see in this thing the intelligence of insanity, because you have some people that they don't get out of the trap that they're in, but they're always on the edge. If you listen to them, I'm going to get out next week. I'm going to be done with this, right? But they're always living in a reality of freedom in some level, even though it never manifests. And their reality is different. It's insane. It doesn't, you thought that was going to do, and then you thought that. You've been wrong 1,000 times. I know, but I just know. I just know this time it'll be different. You're crazy, but your reality is different because you're crazy. Your thoughts and beliefs about the future change the present. And the present changes the future. If you do this instead of this, you've introduced a new variable into the future equation. You did this instead of this. And now the future is different. So we dwelled here because one of the most important frameworks of reality is time, the past, the present, and the future. And scientifically speaking, it is very clear that there is a dynamic relationship between our past, the present, and the future. That if you change any variable in the past, present, or future, it affects the entire equation, as that equation is processed through what? Through language. Mathematics or words. Those are the two languages of consciousness, mathematics and words. Now, can you take the observer, the one who witnesses the equation and the final digits, out of the equation and still have the equation? If the equation is created with words and numbers that are generated by a conscious mind, does the equation exist if there is no conscious mind to give names to the numbers and to give sounds to the words and to combine them in the recipe within the models of mathematics and paradigms of language that we use? Does reality exist outside of the model of reality? Well, certainly it doesn't exist for us. And if it exists for anything else, does it exist without their lens of perception? Does a perceived reality exist outside the perceiver? I'd say that's a bit of a shaky case to make. What if you looked at reality not through your lenses, but through a radio spectrogram? You're looking at the words on a book. Someone else is looking at energy through a radio spectrogram, the energy of a book. Well, if they say this one is 1 dot every second. You hear that? Look, radio spectrogram, 1 dot every second. Amazing. This other thing over here, whatever it is, this massive energy is 2 dots a second. 1 dot a second, 2 dot a second. Are you looking at the same reality? This is George Hemingway. This is not 1 dot a second. Yeah, it's 1 dot a second. That one's 1 dot a second. This one's 2 dots a second. Well, can you get a reality without an observing and measuring device? And if the observing and measuring device, to measure the reality you're getting through that observing and measuring device, can you get it without observing and measuring it? It's certainly not conscious. So there's a link between the observer and all that is observed. There's a link between the past, the present, the future. At the very least, rationalist materialists will agree that if it all began at the Big Bang, it must all have a shared origin. Well, if you have one set of parents, doesn't that make you a relative? If your great-great-great-grandfather and grandmother is the Big Bang, well, that's my great-great-grandmother too. That's the great-great-grandmother of all the tables, of all the planets, of all the plants, of all the animals, of all your enemies, of all your friends. We all have the same parents, called the Big Bang. We're all related. Delete the Big Bang and everything that follows, poof, doesn't exist either. So there's pretty strong connection. What about space? Could you take all the space that is and take slices out of space and still have the remaining space function the same way? Like, let's take the United States. And, on the West Coast and the East Coast, you've got California, you've got New York. Could we delete Missouri? Just take it as an entire mass. Well, how deep do you go, right? Do you go a mile deep? 2 miles deep? Like, how deep do you pull Missouri out of the equation? Because and what do you do with Missouri, right? Millions of square tons, right? Millions, tens of millions of tons. What do you do with all the dirt that was Missouri in between, right? How do you delete Missouri? Well, we get all of the excavation equipment on the entire planet. Tens of thousands of excavators and bulldozers. And we get all the trucks lined up on all the planets, all the helicopters, and we spend year after year just, right at the various borders of Missouri. We cut a clean line, and then what about the river that's running over the border and falling into the hole? As you dig out Missouri, and water's pouring in. We've got to get all the pumps in, right? Pump it out to the ocean, right? But then the downriver of Missouri that was flowing into this other state, well, then it's running dry. Salmon are they're running up the thing, but they're beaching on the dry sand. That population is ruined there. Then this. You cannot delete a mass of energy that is part of the space-time continuum without affecting every other bit of the space-time continuum. No. That only affects planet Earth. Well, in terms of a major impact, maybe. But what happens? How deep do you go? Like, okay, is Missouri only in the first mile? If we go 1,000 miles deep, excavating Missouri, and the volcanic eruptions start occurring out of the heartland of the U.S. and raining down on the other states, was that a non-impact? You go all the way to the Earth's core and then put in and then spend the entire energy of the planet to reinvent a steel barrier the exact width of Missouri. No Earth's core in here, please. Now, as the Earth starts spinning with a slight variance in its spin, because what does all that dirt go that's just Missouri? Is it evenly scattered around? Is it sent in barges and it covers the ocean floor an inch thick over how much of the Earth? How much of the ocean fauna is killed off by that? Oh, no, we can't do that. We're going to build islands. Okay, so all this gravitational weight that was here on the sphere, what happens when you take a chunk of tire from a car that's driving 100 miles an hour and you move it over to this other and it becomes a lump here? Well, you get a little wobble. Well, does that wobble affect asteroids? Does it mean that some asteroids that wouldn't hit the planet would, and some that would hit wouldn't? Is there a slight gravitational wobble? Is it 0.0000001% or is it 0.00002%? And does that not change the nature of the solar system to, well, Earth was or was not hit with a major asteroid at this point in history? Because of its 0.001 slight wobble, and this was coming within 3 miles of the Earth's atmosphere, but it bounced off. But instead, it came in and woof, wasn't the dinosaurs that were extinct? It was us. So you cannot change a bit of space without affecting the mathematical equation that is space. The decimal point can move depending on distance and all that, but there is a change. So all space is interconnected. All space affects all space. All time affects all time. So here you are, a piece of space and time. Space, time. Past, present, future. You're part of the equation. You're part of all of it, which means that every change you make, inside and out, affects every other thing. And that change radiates out in proportion to its proximity to you, so you get changed the most. Now, this is where editing the past and the future and space is so potent. If I move my body from this neighborhood over to this neighborhood and suddenly a different reality unfolds, that's potent. That's me changing reality. I was over there, now I'm here. I used to feel this, now I feel this. When I go into the future and say, you know what? I can just visualize this. I like that. Yes, that's where I'm going. I'm in a good mood. I like it. I'm in a good mood, right? And that mood radiates out as a meme. Oh, the traffic. Yeah, but did you hear about this? If the person pivots with you, yes, I did. No longer bitching, and the new meme is we talk about this. That's exciting. Reality ripples out. So, editing the past and the future, we can edit the past. What about going back and saying, you know what? That was a horrible event. I'm going to edit it. I'm going to de-highlight it. I'm going to change the circumstances. And I'm going to imagine it moving this way into the future. And because that feels so good, I'm going to change what I'm doing right now. And I'm going to move towards this. That's what I'm doing. I'm now different. They're different. The past is different. The future is different. The impact that I have on people around me is different. The entire mathematical equation of reality is changed when we change as a very, very tiny dot in a very large equation. Go out and change the world.